Let's go over the SAT math strategies. Today, we're going to be covering 8 tips to boost your score and master the SAT math section. Tip number 1, know the layout. On SAT math, we have 2 different math sections. Section 3, the no calculator section, and Section 4, the calculator section. For Section 3, there are 20 questions total, 15 multiple choice, and 5 grid-ins. You have 25 minutes to complete those questions. For the calculator section, you have 38 questions, 30 multiple choice, and 8 grid-ins, with 55 minutes to complete those. So in total, that's 58 questions in 80 minutes. Now, within each section, the questions will generally start off easy and get harder as they go. Now, once you get to the grid-in questions towards the end, they will get easier. So it's important that you leave time for the grid-ins so that you are able to do some of the easier questions. As you can see here, this is question 15 and 16, both of which are pretty hard questions, but you can see that question 15 is the last question in section 3. It's a pretty hard question, whereas question 16 is the first grid-in question. That's going to be a whole lot easier. The next tip for you is to use the formulas given. You see here the reference sheet that's given at the beginning of both section 3 and 4 on the SAT. It's important that you familiarize yourself with all the different formulas. So you can see here we have the area and circumference of a circle, the volume for different shapes like cylinders, cubes, and prisms, and we also have the special right triangles and Pythagorean theorem. These can be especially helpful when you're stuck on a geometry question and are unsure of the formula. The next tip is to know what's being tested. The most important topic that you see come up on SAT math is Algebra 1. It makes up 62% of the questions, followed by geometry and algebra, which both make up about 19%. So it's super important that you're very comfortable in all of your basic algebra things like foiling, factoring, solving for x. All of these concepts are going to be continually asked throughout the test. The next tip is to find your math weaknesses and drill them. It's important to find your greatest areas of improvement and work on those. For every question that you miss, you need to identify the type of question it is. What you'll begin to notice is that there are patterns to the types of questions that you miss. What you need to do is you need to notice those patterns and practice those specific skills. The next thing, and one of our favorites, is to know the question types. The first question types is algebra and word problems. Again, algebra makes up a huge portion of the test. There's about 11.4 questions per test on these topics. So solving linear equations and inequalities, literal equations, and absolute values. The next is system of equations, polynomials, and factoring. There's about 12 of these on each test. You will never take an SAT math section and not see a system of equation question or a factoring question. So make sure you know how to do these things. I can promise you they will come up. Learn how to do them and get them right. The next is linear and exponential equations. These make up about 10 questions per test. You'll see things like linear and exponential functions, slope, and average rate of change. The next is statistics and percents. This is more of the Algebra 2 stuff that you'll see come up. There's actually about 12.2 questions on each test, so it's important that you're comfortable doing these types of things with and without a calculator. And the last are graphs, functions, and geometry. There's 12.6 questions on each test. Things like intercepts, triangles, angles, circles. These are where you're going to use that reference sheet that we were discussing earlier. The next tip is to use the answer choices, right? If we're asked to solve for a variable and it's a multiple choice question, plug back in. Think of a multiple choice question as though one of the answers is right in front of your face. Which one is the right answer? How do we get that right answer? What steps do we need to do in order to solve that question? And use those answer choices to your benefit. Maybe it means eliminating, maybe it means identifying a step that you forgot, but make sure you use them. They're there. Let them help you. The biggest tip, and probably the hardest one for a lot of students, is to get comfortable without your calculator. Say goodbye to your best friend for now. Try doing simple math during the week, like adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers without a calculator. Things like fraction rules, long division, multiplication, get super comfortable with that stuff. My best tip is to just practice without your calculator as much as you can. When you find yourself grabbing your cell phone and doing a simple operation, ask myself, how can I use mental math, or how can I write this out and solve it? Get comfortable. It will be a huge advantage on that section 3, that no calculator section. And our last tip for today is to guess on every question you don't know. On the old SAT, you used to be penalized for leaving things blank, but that's not the case anymore, okay? Do not leave anything blank. Make sure everything is filled in. If you're unsure about a question, make sure you guess as best as you can. Even if you eliminate one answer choice, that will give you a much better shot at getting it right. If you have absolutely no idea what the right answer is, you still have a 25% chance of getting it right on a multiple choice. Okay, so it's super important that you do not leave anything blank. When you're handing in your test, when their time is about to be called, give a quick glance over and make sure every bubble is filled in. Thank you for joining us and for hearing those tips. I hope they help you. What you're going to do now is you're going to spend time identifying different question types from real SAT questions. Identifying the different question types will help you do better on your score, because once you identify the questions, you will know the correct steps in order to solve it. And you'll also be able to identify those areas of improvements like we were mentioning earlier. Enjoy!